Hello, everyone. I'm Ed Densel, and I host Unfound, and I run this YouTube channel. I realize you don't want to give a thumbs up to the following video until you watch it. You know what? That's totally understandable. I can appreciate that. But what you can do right now is subscribe to this channel. The button is right there. Thanks. Mary Louise Watkins was a 54-year-old divorcee from Modesto, California.
She had 5 children and worked in the medical field. On May 17th, 1979, Mary packed up everything she owned and said she was running off to get married. She was never seen again. I'm Ed Densel, and this is Unfound. Over the past almost 6 years of Unfound, I've not talked too much about serial killers, mainly because I'm not convinced many of the disappearances we've covered have been part of any kind of spree. In fact, I don't even like using the M word, murder, or the K word, kill, or the D word, dead, because I don't like attaching finality to something that might not be final. I try to hold out hope that all these missing people are still alive somewhere. However, if I were to be pressed to answer which unfound missing people could be gone as the result of serial killers, I would say Debbie Lowe, Brandy Myers, and Brenda Condon. That's it. 3 out of 255 disappearances covered. That's 1.3% for you business majors. Well, that percentage is going up today with the disappearance of Mary Watkins. In fact, the percentage will continue to go up over the summer as I hope to cover at least 2 other disappearances connected to the same killer who has successfully hid his victims to this point. So this starts a series I'm calling The Con Man. And now a summary of the case. This is brought to you by my friend Megan Linus' website, charleyproject.org. Mary Watkins, after over 30 years of marriage, had had enough. She and her husband had grown apart, so she filed for divorce and was granted one. Mary landed on her feet. She moved to Modesto and bought a duplex, renting out the other half. Mary found a job at a hospital, working the night shift. Everything seemed perfect. Then in the spring of 1979, things changed without warning. Mary quit her job, sold her house, and took a large amount of cash from her bank, while also giving different people different stories regarding her intentions. So on May 17th, 1979, Mary packed up her car and left her friend's place where she had been staying. Her car was found in downtown Modesto not long after. Mary was never seen again. However, in June, almost exactly a month later, her 5 children received letters from her. Each was postmarked from Modesto. Although each letter was slightly different, each had the same theme. Mary had met a man, and she was running away to get married. Furthermore, Mary had not told this man about her children and did not intend to do so until the time was right. And Mary would not be in touch until she did so. However, no one received a follow-up letter. One of the scariest parts for me about covering disappearances is I've learned that there are people out there who are master manipulators. People who seemingly can quickly see the weaknesses in people and use them to take advantage. Almost as if these people have some sort of horrible superpower. I ask you to think about that while you also try to answer these 3 questions during the interview. Number 1, in retrospect, could anyone have realistically stopped Mary from leaving? Number 2, do you believe Mary wrote those letters under duress, or that what she wrote in them is what she really did and believed? And number 3, is there a weakness in all of us that someone can use to his or her advantage under the right conditions? Not only Mary's family, but law enforcement in California believe Mary was murdered. The guest for this episode is Mary's son, Ed Watkins. Unfound News. Monday, June 6th is a big day. Why? It will be the first time the live show is ever played at the beginning of the week, and that's where it will be staying. 9 p.m. Eastern, by the way. I hope you'll tune in. If not, you can catch the replay when it arrives in your podcast feed on Tuesday morning. Next, the Unfound Now for May is now available for members on our YouTube channel. Please consider joining, by the way. I discussed the disappearance of Marie Peter Toltz, which occurred in LA a little over a month ago. The video will go public within the next 3 days. Finally, tomorrow, June 4th, I am headed to a wedding. I just could not turn down an invitation to be on location when former guest Kelly Bruce gets married in Georgia.
Where you can find Unfound on these following podcast platforms: Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, Podbean, and many others, especially outside the United States. Social media sites: YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and the newest one, TikTok. Listener support sites: patreon.com/unfound podcast, paypal.me/unfound podcast. The website, theunfoundpodcast.com. The email address, unfoundpodcast@gmail.com. And please mention Unfound at all true crime websites and forums. Thank you. I'm so happy to have on this episode of Unfound the son of Mary Watkins, believe it or not, Ed Watkins. Ed, welcome to Unfound.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Good to have you. Good to have you. And listeners should know this interview is going to start, I think something that's going to be going on over the summer, in which I will be talking to family members who believe that mainly their mothers were victims of a man, James Tolliver, who we will be talking about later, of course, in this interview. So, Ed, let's just start here. Let's talk a little bit about your family. How many children are there besides you? Of course, your mother, Mary. How many kids did she have? Maybe if you have any half brothers, half sisters, any situation like that. Let's talk about that to start.
Sure. I'm youngest of 5. There's a 14-year gap between my eldest sister and myself. I had 2 brothers and 2 sisters. My oldest brother, Richard, has since passed. And then I have an older sister, Charley, which is 5 years older than me. And then I have a brother just older than me, Howard, and he's 2 years older than me.
Okay.
And,
wow.
Yep.
Okay. You're the youngest?
I am the baby of the family.
Wow. Okay. All right. And how much? You said one of your siblings has passed. How old was the oldest sibling? Older than you?
4 years older than I am, so she's got to be pushing almost 80 years old. So she got to be like 78.
Wow. we're get into how there was a divorce at one time. Maybe we can talk about that right now. Your mother, of course, you have these children. She got divorced from your father at some point. What was going on? I realized that, maybe how old I'm not sure how old you were at the time, but what was going on in the family that happened?
Right. Well, my parents moved from Ceres, California to San Jose, California, and bought a house like in 1949. And so by the time I came along I was 17, 18 in 1976. So that's how that went down.
Mm-hmm.
My mother, she came to me when she was 17, told me, and when I was 17, she told me she was going to get a divorce once I was 18. And I told her, don't worry about me. Just go ahead. Don't wait. Go ahead. And so she went ahead with that. And we got an apartment for my senior year of high school.
Wow.
And we lived together in an apartment there. And then once I graduated, she moved back to Modesto, her hometown, to be with her time friend and cousin, Mary Nunes. And so there was no real legal battle. I was already 18, and my parents sold the house, and my mom took her half of the divorce, $28,000, and bought a duplex in Modesto.
Wow. Were you surprised when she told you, maybe if you can speak for your other siblings, if you feel comfortable doing that, was that a surprise that she was going to choose to do that, get a divorce? Was surprised?
No, she'd been married 35 years, and she was a non-drink, non-smoker, and dad liked to drink. He was a NASCAR official, and he spent time at the track, and they were high school boyfriend and girlfriend, and we outgrow it sometimes.
Yeah. Okay. And then you growing up there, once again, maybe to say that you weren't very surprised.
No, it should have happened earlier. Even I think I could see that she was just trying to hold it and keep it together for me,
Wow.
so I could have
Okay.
both parents until I was 18.
Okay. Were you a little worried about that? Your mother getting divorced, going back to living on her own? Were you and your other children or your other brothers and sisters, were they a little worried about your mother at this point? Or did you think, I think she'll be all right being a single woman again? What were you thinking?
Yeah, no, it seemed like a brighter future for her. It got old with my dad, and
Okay.
it's it's good. It's good. She still was 54, 50 years old. Still plenty of life.
Yeah. Okay. I know the feeling. I'm 51 myself. So, okay, I got you. All right. So maybe you were looking at it, your family's looking at it. This is like a step in the right direction, maybe for her, like a new
Yeah,
beginning for
no,
her.
it went great. It went great. She bought a duplex in Modesto that gave her income on one side of the duplex, and
Wow.
um, I wanted to play baseball in college, and so I followed her there a year later. So it gave me a place to live, and I didn't have to work while I played baseball in college for 2 years. So I was
Okay.
happy to be playing for the junior high school or the junior college where she was from, representing them for 2 years. So
Mm,
it was good.
oh, okay. In
And then
Modesto.
I outgrew in Modesto,
Okay.
and I outgrew that when I graduated or finished my 2 years of college baseball. I moved out of the house and moved up to Kirkwood Ski Resort up in the Sierra
Yeah.
Mountains.
Okay. All right. So, let's just talk about your mother, being that she ended up being a single again. What would you say about her? What are some memories of her, maybe in her life after being married, that you would talk maybe about her personality? What was her job? Things like that. What can you say about that?
Um, she was really generous, really kind. She loved her father. She loved her sister. Um, yeah, she was always sending packages off to some charity and money. And the last time I saw her, or the second to last time I saw her, she was dancing around singing into an avocado, singing Don't It Make My Brown Eyes Blue by Crystal Gale, a
Crystal
big song
Gale,
back in
right?
1979,
I know that tune.
so that was good. I had a good feeling there about that. So
Yeah, singing into an avocado.
yeah,
That's pretty good. Okay.
because I loved avocado on toast, and so she was always willing to make it. So
Yeah, okay. What was her job? What was her how was she making her money? You said maybe she was
she
renting
was
out
a
the other side.
licensed She was a licensed vocabulary nurse, and
Oh,
she worked the graveyard shift, the 11 to 7 o'clock shift, most of the time, so that she could be home to send me off to school in the morning and
mhm.
sleep till the afternoon, and then always had something cooking, fresh bread or a pie or something for the afternoon when I got home.
Yeah. So what you're saying is you got to see her, being that you just said that you went there to play baseball and go to school. You were seeing her quite a bit then. Those last couple years before she went missing, seeing her quite a bit.
Yeah, I think I had been gone for one ski season,
Okay.
uh, so I probably would have left like in 1978, the fall, and worked Kirkwood Ski Resort for 6 months, and then showed back up in April, and that's when I found out she was selling the house. There was a for sale sign, and um,
Right.
like that. So I helped her move all of her stuff.
Okay, and we will certainly get into that here in a bit. So this is how you remember she's a nurse, making decent money, working a graveyard shift. She has this duplex. Maybe she's renting the other side of it out, and so she's newly single. Late 70s, not maybe the easiest time for women, but she's figuring it all out. Okay. How was your father doing through all of this? Were you keeping in
He
contact with
didn't
him?
handle it very well. He
Please.
didn't handle it very well at all, and he moved to Baja California
Wow.
and pretty much just went in the tank.
Oh no. Right there. Don't move it. You're perfectly framed right there. Okay. All right. All right. So your dad maybe at least from a divorce point of view, your mother seemingly got out of the divorce in a better shape than your father did. She seemed to handle it better than he did. Okay. Got that. So newly single. Being that you did see her, you were around her. Of course, we're going to talk about James Tolliver eventually, but were you aware? Did she talk about, getting back into the dating pool? Or did you ever see any men? Did she ever see her go out with any guys while you were around her for those couple years? What can you say about that?
One time, a gentleman, his name is Ignacio, and that was her last name, Ignacio. And so I thought that was pretty entertaining, and I believe that she did meet him through Parents Without Partners.
Huh.
And yeah, I knew she was trying to find it.
Hmm. All right. So she had gotten divorced, but that didn't turn her off maybe from getting into a relationship again, maybe even getting married again.
Right.
Okay.
She, yeah.
Okay. And would you say regarding her money situation after being divorced, how was, her money situation? Sounds like it's pretty good. She has a job and she's renting this duplex out. Would you say she was probably not poor, right? Doing okay for herself.
Yeah, she was doing great. She had her own money now and making her own decisions. So
Hmm.
I was pretty proud of her.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And now let's just talk about this, though. This is something that's out there, so I have to ask you about it. You, in living with her, at some point saw a book about marriage. When did you see this book? How did it affect you? Did it surprise you? When did this happen? This book about, I don't know, getting married again or something like that. I don't know the exact title, and I don't have it in my notes, but what can you say about that?
Well, when she said she was going to move her house and we hired a crew and a truck to move her stuff into storage, I found a book said called Starting Over in Marriage. And I questioned her about it, and she was really flustered and kind of stumbling and bumbling around for about 5 minutes. And then she finally came back and said, "Oh, well, it's for your sister. Your sister's having problems." And at that point, I just blew it off and didn't give it another thought. But looking back, I always think, did someone buy that book for her to encourage her to get married, or was that her own idea?
Yeah. When she told you that, being that you said she looked flustered, did you believe her at the time, or did you think maybe something else was going on?
I kind of did think something else was going on, but
Mm-hmm.
I didn't give it a second thought.
Okay.
It was private apparently, and I never gave it a second thought until
Okay.
years later.
Of course. Okay. And of course, we're going to find out there was some things, we're going things that you found out after the fact. But would you have ever called your mother kind of a, I don't know, secretive person, maybe keeping things from you, things going on in her life? Or would you say, if I were to use the word secretive to describe your mother, would you say that's true or false?
Well, I don't think she was secretive today. I think she had a secret, and I think she was very capable of keeping a secret, and other things didn't know. So,
Oh, okay. Now, you've brought it up a couple times, and I think this is a very key part of her disappearance, and that is the selling of this house. Of course, you've already explained. She gets divorced. She moves to Modesto. She buys this duplex. You're living there at least part-time, I guess, or a lot of the time, not full-time, part of the time. So there's another part of it, maybe that she can run out. Then all of a sudden, the way it seems to me, maybe you can put it in your own words, she's selling it. Were you surprised? What did you say about this? How did she explain why she was doing this?
right. So that's a few different stories do start coming in, but it was no secret. She was listed with the realtor and had a force sign out in the front of her. Brother had gone by and had told people she's selling her house. Why? And I can't remember what he told her. She initially told me that she was moving back to the Almaden Valley, is right near San Jose by Mobile. And first, she just wanted to go on a vacation before she started back over that way. And so I totally bought into that whole thing, and I helped her move her stuff into storage, and I thought she was on her way.
Okay. Anybody else? Remember, I'm thinking you were at about 20 at the time. Was there anybody else in your family, maybe some of your siblings, who might have said to you, there's something about this that doesn't seem right? Anything like that? Or was it just, this is what she's doing and everybody's just going along with it? Did anybody have any concerns about any of this?
Well, later, my sister did get a letter, but in the paper it said that my oldest sister had no idea that she was selling the house and that she was going to move with her. She was quoted as saying that she was going to be moving to her with her. Sorry, and there was no connection there. But once my other sister received her letter, it said that she was selling the house so that she could get married and go on a honeymoon.
Wow. All right, being that you've brought up these are letters that were sent to each of you, correct? Each of you got your own personal letter?
Right. So my mom, last time they can remember seeing her was, I think, on Mother's Day in 1979, or at least February 17th is the day they're marking it as the anniversary. And I don't think we received our letters till the first or second week of June. Excuse me.
Wow.
And we all received letters that we received 5 letters, each one of us. And in my sister's was the only one that said that the guy was a doctor, and that but basically that she wasn't going to tell him she had kids. And when I received my letter, I laughed out loud because I'm thinking she belongs to Parents Without Partners. Obviously, you're at a place that's Parent Without Partners, but then I had to rethink that, thinking, well, I didn't know where she had met the person. She could have met him anywhere, and so that wasn't relevant. But
so you got
I
these
just can't
letters.
believe that you couldn't talk to my mom for more than 20 minutes without her saying something about her
Right,
family and her kids.
right, like any good mom, of course.
On the regards to the letters that we received, my aunt also received a letter, and it stated the same thing, that she had met a doctor
Mm-hmm.
and that she was going to be running off, but she was going to tell him that she had children after the honeymoon.
Wow.
And
Okay.
so I just find it all. I thought she wrote him under duress, but my other sisters believe that that's not true, that she had totally bought in and she totally believed.
Okay. All right. We don't want to do too much speculation right at this point, but I need to ask you the accepted disappearance date is May 17th of 1979. So you got these letters after she went missing.
Right.
Okay. Do you know, did she mail them to each of you? Mail through the mail?
She mailed them to me. They were postmarked from Stockton, California. But I learned basically all the mail goes to Stockton from that area and gets postmarked before it goes out.
Okay. Do you remember the postmark date?
And I burnt my letter right away. My father was visiting at the time, and I disposed of the letter in the fireplace almost immediately because I didn't want to upset him. For him to find out I didn't tell him. I believed that she was married probably and didn't want to tell him. So,
Okay.
of course, looking back, you wish you had the letter,
right,
for evidence or.
Right. Now, I want to come back to these letters in just a moment, but we have to remember, she sold this place. Where did you live after she sold this place? Where did you go?
I went to the Santa Cruz Mountains to my grandmother's house, my father's mom.
Okay.
And that's where I received my letter.
Okay. So she knew that you were there. So the address went to the grandmother's where you were.
Yes.
All right. So she knew that you were there. Okay. Now, my understanding, though, once again from my notes, is that after she sold the place, she went to live with a friend of hers, at least for a little while.
Yes, I believe there was a nurse that she worked with at work, and she was just staying with her until her plans, could come together the way she wanted. During that time, she called me and told me to come and get $100 from her. I was passing through on my way to Tahoe, so it wasn't that far out of my way. And that was the last time that I did see her, but she gave me a crisp, brand new $100 bill.
Wow.
And,
okay.
Which was kind of surprising because the last time that I'd seen her, she couldn't give me any money. She told me because it was all tied up and that she couldn't spend any of it right now.
Okay. All right. So so we have this situation seemingly out of the blue. Maybe not so much, but that may have been the way it seemed. She decides she's going to sell her house. She gave the story that she was going to be moving back somewhere. She goes and lives with a friend of hers. You go to live with your father's mother. And then all of a sudden, she's moving out from this friend's place. And then all of her children get these letters about how suddenly you're finding out she's getting married. Is that pretty much how it went?
She was seen loading all of her stuff into her car, and she told the roommate that she was going to San Jose to my sister's house. And they say she never showed up at my sister's house, but my sister wasn't expecting her.
Huh. So it seems that she had lied to this roommate. Told her she was doing one thing and doing another.
She was, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, she was covering up.
Okay. What do you remember? Of course, you've already talked about getting your letter. What was if you can say or understand, at least one of your siblings is no longer with us, but how did your other siblings react to those letters? I mean, once you got them, did you all call like each other and say, hey, I just got this letter from Mom? What did you all say as a group?
Right. One brother he's out of the loop a little bit, but did talk to my other two sisters. My eldest sister, she worked for the San Jose Police Department as a dispatcher, and she was completely baffled and confused by this being so far out of character.
Mm-hmm.
And she was able to contact the Modesto Police Department personally later.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So all of you were surprised. All of you, she's saying she's running off. She's going to get married. And all of you, and then on top of that, at least in your letter, it said that at the right time she would tell this new guy that she has kids, but until that point, she was going to let this guy believe she had no kids.
Right. It didn't say anything about telling him in my letter. In my letter, it just said she wasn't telling him that she had kids, and it just baffles me that you could be conned by someone so much that they decide to deceive them, because if she is deceiving them, but yeah, it's beyond me.
Just the way you look at the letters now, was it in her handwriting? I realize it might have been forced. I don't want so much going to get into that, but was it her handwriting?
It was hers. It was her handwriting, and like I said, I thought, like, what a perfect scam for that to write before he offered to make her write the letters, and they were written under duress.
We can't. We're not going to get into that. I'm trying. I'm just sticking to the just sticking to the facts. Your opinion. Was it her handwriting or not?
Yes, it is definitely. It's definitely hers. She had a left hand. She was left-handed. She had a style that was her own.
Okay, very good. All right. So what do you remember? So of course, you didn't get those letters until June. The accepted disappearance date, from what I've seen, when this roommate saw her moving out, it's like May 17th. So we have like at least a few weeks between her moving out and then you getting these letters. The group of you getting these letters.
At about the same time, what was next is my aunt gets a call saying her car has been impounded and they have it at the storage yard.
Oh.
And at this time, we didn't consider her missing. We didn't know that she was missing. And my sister went and picked up the car.
Okay. So all right. So this car then, in the meantime, when did you find out about this car being, I guess, abandoned or parked somewhere? When did you find out about it?
So my sister goes and picks up the car, and when she goes to fill up the gasoline, the gas tank, she notices the back tire has just been worn down in one big, huge patch all the way down to the steel belt of the tire. Oh, and so her first impression was that the car had been drugged, either in gear or with the parking brake on.
Interesting.
And so now we don't know if the tow truck driver did some damage to it or like that, but when you start speculating, you wonder if it was drugged to the place it ended up by a different person.
Okay. I just want to make something clear, though. You don't get your letter until June. Did you know about the car first being abandoned, or did you get the letter first for you personally? You remember?
It was close. I'd have to say that the car was first before we got the letters.
Okay. All right.
The car, because the car got towed 2 days after it, and then it was another 2 weeks until my sister went and recovered it. And then I believe like shortly after that, another 2 weeks in June, I received my letter.
All right. So you got this letter that's really weird. And then on top of that, her car is at a location, not at her work, not where she used to live. At that point, were you very concerned? I mean, you had to be thinking something's not right here. You didn't know what it was, but you had to be thinking something's not right here.
The last time she was seen loading up the car with luggage.
Yeah.
And when they recovered the car, It had nothing in it except a plant. And in the glove box, it had a map with an outline how to get to the Stockton Marina, just in a felt pen, tracing it from Modesto to the Stockton Marina. That was the only two things that I ever heard about being in the car.
Okay, so her luggage never seen again?
Never, nope.
Okay, none of her clothes, nothing like that. Never seen again.
Nothing, no.
Okay. Do you know what happened to the car once it got towed away? And maybe one of your family, I'm not saying it had to be you, but somebody in your family surely told, once the car got towed or impounded that, yeah, she took off with a guy. Do you know if that actually went on? I'm not saying that you actually did that, but did somebody in your family say, well, she took off with this guy or was getting married and just left her car? Were the police informed of that?
No, my sister went and retrieved the car, and she never bought into any of it. But once the car was found, then her best friend went down to the police department. Once we contacted her and told her that we had the car, she went down to the police department and reported her missing, saying that this can't be, this can't be.
Okay, so something between the car and these letters and, her just taking off and, what each of these letters, a little bit different, but it's kind of the same tone that I'm going away for a while, don't expect to hear back from me. Obviously does not paint a very good picture, kind of a scary picture.
No, it starts going sideways from there. I mean,
yeah.
My oldest sister worked for the San Jose Police Department, she took a detective from the police department in San Jose and went to Modesto, and they questioned the investigating people, and they questioned her. And all she got out of that was that they told her that they had interviewed people. They don't tell you the names or anything like that,
right.
But they told her that they had impounded or searched a car and took in cloth samples out of the car thinking it was blood. They searched a house, but they said that they had no leading information that was relative to what they were trying to do.
Okay. About this friend who saw her, packing up her her car and was going to go away. You don't have to use this friend's name, but what did this friend say about that day? Did your mother seem nervous? Did she seem anxious, happy? What kind of was that feeling that day when she's packing up her car?
I mean, a friend was fairly new to the family. We didn't really have that much contact with her. Okay. I don't even think the rest of my members of the family had ever met her. I'd met her because I lived in Modesto and they had lunch together and stuff like that. But there's nothing I can find that the lady said she had any red flags. She sent her off to my sister's house and that was it.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. All right. So we got this car, nothing in it that's helpful. Probably even in the 21st century, they probably wouldn't fingerprint it or anything anyway. It's not, probably not. Obviously, your mother had told different people different stories. And then we have these letters that don't quite seem, to have with her character, maybe most mothers' characters, of course. A lot of strange things going on here. When did you find out about all of this cash, this money that she had withdrawn? Actual, not just taking like a cashier's check, but actual dollars. When did you find out about that?
Okay, just one more thing about the car, though, in the map. My brother thought that it was significant that the map was outlined with a felt pen to the Stockton Marina. And so he's gone now, but he always believed that that had something to do, what was a clue, and so
yeah, sure. Maybe I'm glad. Thank you for bringing that up, Ed. Maybe I should ask you this: your mother, your knowledge, had she ever been to the Stockton Marina before? To your knowledge?
Yeah, we no, the police couldn't make a tie to it. They didn't really try. They said that was just different, and you don't know the way your mind works. That would be a good way to pull somebody off the trail, or was that where she was going?
Right.
That's a big question in my mind.
Right. How far is it from Modesto to the Stockton Marina? How far
35
approximately?
miles, about 35 miles.
35 miles. Okay, thank you. All right, so we don't even know if the map's in the car, but that doesn't mean it's her map. It could have been somebody else who put the line on the map. There's a lot of different possibilities there. It doesn't
Right.
just because
So yeah, you can't tie it in at all. Now
all
you're
right.
asking about the money.
Yeah, please. Yeah, now the money, when did you find out about this?
Well,
Please.
immediately people were asking, okay, now she's gone. Where's her money? And how they found out that she had taken it out of the bank, I'm not really sure. But the person that ran the bank was a high school friend of hers. And there's different stories varying that she went to different banks to get small amounts because they wouldn't give her the large amount all in one. And the banker asked her what she was going to do with all the money, and she said she had a property investment that she wanted to do. Another story is that she couldn't get the money out, and she opened another account and then had all the money wired in one lump sum, and then went and got it. But
Wow.
you know,
Wow. Okay, so there are a couple different stories, but your understanding, though, now we're doing this interview on May 30th, so Memorial Day of 2022. Your understanding, though, is that she eventually did get a bunch of cash. And when I say cash, actual dollar bills. Is that your understanding now?
$28,000 in $100 bills.
Oh my gosh. In 1979 money, so that's like
Yep.
$100,000 today or more.
So
Okay.
it's just a huge red flag for anyone.
Yeah.
Unless you're doing a drug deal, cash
Mhm.
money just really isn't
It's
necessary.
yeah, it is a huge red flag, of course. Um, your understanding, once again, I realize that other people were working on this, but your understanding now, does that mean all of those accounts or whatever was totally cashed out? She had no more money in the bank at all? Was there any money left in any branch anywhere for her? Do you even know?
Hmm. Yeah, that's questions that I asked my two sisters yesterday.
Hmm. Okay.
I just have no idea. I
Okay.
just believe there was no money. We didn't get any money. We didn't split any money. They said there was no money.
Okay. So, and your understanding, though, most of this money would have been from the sale of that duplex that we've already talked about.
It's the exact amount that
Wow.
yeah, she went through the exact amount. $28,000 was the profit that she made on the house, and that's
Okay.
exactly how much she went through.
Okay. Wow. Okay. All right, so we have a lot of bad signs here. So we move on to this. When did you first hear about this group called Parents with Partners? Had you ever heard of it before your mother went missing?
Yes, it's called Parents Without Partners, and
Without
it's for
partners, I'm sorry. Yes,
um,
thank you.
uh, you know parents who are trying to find a new spouse and keep families together, and maybe hook two families up, make a bigger family. Or it was just, I don't know, it was a dating service, but apparently it's fairly expensive to be a member.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But
Yeah.
I did meet that gentleman Ignacio at the house, and he was introduced as somebody that she had met at Parents Without Partners, and that would have been,
Mm.
in like February of '79.
All right. So you
A
knew
few
about it
months.
because she had met some guy there and he had come to your house, and so you knew that
Yeah.
she was going to this. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know after she went missing, for example, was Ignacio ever tracked down? We realized that he is not, maybe they didn't realize it at the time, but was he ever
Yes.
tracked down to be talked to about this group? What can you say about that?
Yes. I received a phone call from the Modesto Police Department asking my side of the story, what I knew, and I mentioned him, and they said that they had interviewed him and checked him out, and they had cleared him. That he was just a nice guy.
Okay. All right. So, just for the record, then, because of this, you knew about it
parents without partners before she went missing. But so it was at least in your consciousness that, she's getting out there. Maybe she's meeting some men. She meets this Ignacio guy, seems like a good guy. Obviously, it didn't work out. But would you say that at the time after all of this, we have the letters, we have the car, we have the selling of her house, we have this cash? Was these parents without partners group a real center of the investigation, or when did it become a real, important part of the investigation?
Well, initially, I told my sister that they went and investigated, and they told her that they never heard of my mother, that they had no records of her being a member. But then I guess the second or third time that she went back, they finally did say that she was a member, and they
Okay.
and what information they got out of that, I don't know.
Okay. Do you know if this was like a month after your mother went missing, like that mid-May 1979 was
No,
like a month later?
this is like September,
Oh,
probably.
okay.
This
So
is
some months later.
you know. Yeah.
Okay. But, I don't know what to think of them not ever hearing of her at first, but then finally admitting she was a member there. That is, I don't know what to think of that. But okay, so she was going to this Parents Without Partners. She'd met one guy, and obviously, even here in the 21st century, know that online dating and dating groups and these things, when a woman goes missing, they do take a look at her social media. Was she on some sort of dating app, Tinder or Bumble or whatever else? So what happens the rest of 1979, the way you remember it? Any leads? Does it things kind of calm down? Because we're going to get to 1980 and we're going to talk about James Tolliver here in a short bit. But the rest of 1979, what do you remember about it at the time, your personal experience?
I would call the Modesto Police Department about once a month, and they would just say they had no leads, nothing, different what they were telling my sister. At least they were giving her little bits and pieces. But me personally, they said they had no leads, that she was a grown woman, that she could, do as she pleased, and, that most of the people lost are found, that,
True.
and so it just starts becoming a horror story after that, because any news about anyone found or anything starts playing into the mind.
Right. Okay. When was the first time you heard the name James Tolliver? Tolliver. When was the first time you heard his name?
Well, I lived up in the High Sierras, and there was a newspaper, Big Bear. I can't really tell you the exact name, but it was a newspaper article that somebody told me that I probably should read.
Yeah, and what did it say?
And there it was. It just said, it was just flat out that this guy did what he did, and that it was the same MO as my mother, and they couldn't tie it in, but it probably was.
Okay. So would you say this was in 1980? Was this after he murdered Florence Regina?
Yes. So
Is
this
that
would have
the article
been
you're
another
talking
year
about?
and a half. Yeah, the article would have been of what happened on October 8th, 1980.
Right. So this is like a year and a half after your mother goes missing. Somebody says, maybe you need to take a look at this article. You look at it and you see that there's this article that I've found many of them online at this point regarding Florence's, and we'll get into the Florence, the particulars of that in a moment. But it was something that kind of felt the same as what happened to your mother. Of course, her remains have not been found yet, but it kind of fit the same modus operandi.
Well, no, they mentioned my mother in the article.
Oh, they did.
They said
Okay.
that they had questioned him about four other women, and my mom was one of them. And it was pretty much the same scenario kind of thing. Meet a woman, have her sell her property, take her money, and she disappears, and they never find her.
So the first time you ever heard about James Tolliver is when you learned that article, saw that article, and your own mother's name was in that article.
Yes.
Oh my! How did you react to that? That had to have been shocking. Just, I mean, a year and a half later, not hearing anything. I mean, how did that affect you?
Yeah, you go through the whole stage. You blame yourself, fear.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Had to be real shocking.
you don't want to believe. There's no body. They can't really tie him into it. It's just they have circumstantial, but you want to believe. Yes, she does have amnesia. She did go on vacation. We will get a letter. But
Right.
no, I mean it was the same scenario. I knew it, and it ripped my heart out. And,
Yeah. Did you, I'm guessing, did your siblings see that same article around the same time, or did you have to alert them to it, or how did that work? Do you remember?
I can't tell you how they found out or what they knew, but my sister was connected with the police department, and I think one time when she called up, they said, well, this is what they have so far, and that there wasn't really much reason to keep looking or anything.
Wow. Okay. So you find out about him. All of you seem to find out about him through these articles. Through this article, there were many articles written, it should be known.
Right. The Charley Project is just a great place to go for missing people.
It is.
They covered the story really in depth. They gave me, a lot of information so I can try to close it.
Yeah, my friend Megan runs that segment. Megan Linez, I've known her for about 5 years now over that, so I agree with you. Have you found out when you first heard about this, and I'll maybe just read off what it kind of went on with Florence Regina, but did you find out in 1979 when your mother went missing, was James Tolliver questioned?
Well, I have no way of knowing. My sister was in contact with the Modesto Police Department, but they weren't giving any names to what they were doing. They were explaining what they were doing, but they wouldn't give you a person's name, I don't think. So, yeah.
But you have since found out, though, that regarding parents without partners, that he was actually in that group.
Right. So when they finally caught up with him, in his wallet, he had a Parents Without Partners membership card.
Oh, my.
And the lady, Racina,
Florence Regina.
Yes. Her Parents Without Partners card was found in his house.
Oh, my. Okay. All right. And
after they searched it, they searched his house after the incident, and they found behind a brick in the fireplace, I think a lady that had been questioned that had dated him revealed to them that in his fireplace he had a secret brick, and that he creeped her out too much and that she couldn't take it, so she left. But they found that spot, and they got her jewelry out of there, and they sent pictures of it to my aunt to see if she could identify any of it. Mm-hmm. My sister believes some of it was, but there's no proof or anything like that.
Okay. I'm just going to ask you again, once again, if you don't know, totally fine, Ed, but I need to ask you this. When your mother went missing, did the police, in doing this investigation, knowing all this stuff about the car, about the money and all these things, did they ever actually question James Tolliver? Of course, before Florence Regina got killed, but was he a suspect in your mother's disappearance at all until Florence was murdered? Even no.
I have no way of knowing that. I believe they did, but I have no way of telling because they wouldn't tell my sister they were investigating. And
Right.
I think if you talk to my other sister, she would say yes, they did interview him, and that she did say that he called her, but they were just friends at this place. But I have no proof of any of that.
Okay. Just in general, we know that your mother brought Ignacio back to your house at one point, a guy that she met at I keep calling Venture, Parents Without Partners. But had anybody in retrospect ever said, yes, I saw Mary with James? Did they ever go on a date together? Did he ever go to her house? Was he ever introduced to any of her friends? Anything like that to put those two together at all? Any ideas about that?
Her fellow nurses at work, supposedly, I've heard, identified a picture of him that said that he was the man that picked her up in the morning. She worked 11 to 7,
Mm-hmm.
11 at night to 7 in the morning. But I don't know if that's hearsay, who said that, if there's any truth to it at all. But
okay,
I was told that somebody did identify him. And
okay. So it sounds to me like they met at Parents Without Partners, but they kept their relationship very quiet. Is that your perception, the way you look at it now?
yeah, for some reason, whatever spell he could put over, he could convince the people that they should keep it on the hush hush. And the only reason I say this is because the last lady, I want to call her Racina, but
Florence Regina.
Florence. Let me call her Florence.
Florence, yes.
Florence. They were attending meetings at Parents Without Partners, but nobody in the group knew that they were dating. And so pretty much a red flag anytime somebody tells you to keep your relationship. They're either married, having an affair, or something's going on there. Something seriously is going on there.
Right. Okay. Let me just now, for the listeners, let me just go through with Florence Regina. The reason we're talking about James Tolliver so much is we believe that he is a serial killer going the whole way back to maybe 1973 with the disappearance of a woman named Hester Chandler. Then in 1974, a woman, Jackie Cooper, went missing, or was it 1976? But there was an order of Hester Chandler, then Jackie Cooper, and then James Tolliver's own wife goes missing. And then the next year, Mary Watkins goes missing. And then we get to 1980. And for the listeners, once again, what happened with Florence Regina? It seems that James Tolliver kind of did the same thing he seemingly did with Mary and these other women, where he convinces them that he's going to marry them and he has this business opportunity if they'll take cash out of the bank. And he was a degenerate gambler, addicted gambler, probably using this money to blow it and using these women for their money and then killing them, unfortunately. And what happened with Florence Regina is that he tried this with her, and they got out going toward Lake Tahoe. And the story goes, it's actually in an article that his brother had dropped his truck off out somewhere. Florence and James are in a car together. They go out there. Seemingly, James created a story to pull over. It just happened to be where his truck was. He shoots Florence twice. She has all this money, and as he's going back to his vehicle to get away with her money, he has a heart attack and dies. And that's where he is found, and then she is found a short distance away, obviously having been shot by him. In addition, as Ed first told me, and then I was able to find corroboration on this, James Tolliver had actually written a suicide note to make it look like Florence Regina killed herself, but he didn't have an opportunity to do that because he had to shoot her twice to kill her. So James Tolliver died of a heart attack after murdering one of these women, or Florence Regina might be missing too. So, and it was that story now that Ed here in this interview is talking about that made it into the news, and that's how Mary's name got in there, James's ex-wife got it, or wife got in there, and all these other women were mentioned as well. Um, well, how do you feel about all of that? This guy seemingly being able to pull this off with, so many women, he probably would have continued to do it had he not had a heart attack and died. Um, does it surprise you that your mother would be convinced by a guy like that to take her money out of the bank? What do you think about that, Ed?
I mean, it's just so hard to fathom that people can put a spell on somebody so overwhelmingly
Yeah.
that they can't see, what's right. Um,
Hmm.
Definitely, I mean, they questioned him about Jackie Cooper. He said he worked with her. He didn't know
Right.
anything about it. His
That's
wife,
right.
he claimed that she took all the money back and left, and they just shrugged it
Right.
off.
Yes.
And when you look at all these facts, you can see that they're getting closer. And his story changes. His MO changes from just disappearing, making them disappear, to he's going to have a body and he's going to shoot her, commit the suicide, and have the note. But the note also, I'm probably getting off of what you were talking about, but
Go ahead.
she was a teacher and she had really fine English, and so he wrote a note on a typewriter, sorry, that was really poorly written, and then he had two guns in his pocket when they found him at his truck. So I got off what you were talking about,
That's all
but
right. But um, Florence Regina had good English, and there was the suicide note that he had typed up, and there's nobody would have ever believed that she typed it.
right, that was the point that I was trying to
Yeah.
make. That it wasn't.
So how did this affect you? You find, of course, she's missing for a while, and then you hear about James Tolliver, and then it all, of course, comes together. Of course, we're still here in 2022. Your mother's not been found, but how did that affect you back at that time, and how has it continued to affect you, Ed?
It's just brutal. You just can't believe that there can be that much evil, and yeah, I mean, it's that's
Hmm.
tough. That's really tough to say.
Yeah. How did this? How would you say that your siblings were affected by this news coming out? Finally figuring out who probably did something to your mother, but of course, her still being missing. How is this? How do you think, if you can speak for your siblings, how do you think it's affected them?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of anger. You blame yourself. Oh, I could have done more, but really, there was nothing we could do. By the time we got the letters, it was already too late.
Yeah.
Um, I had talked to Jackie's daughter and her dad. That would have been Jackie's husband. We had talked to Tolliver at his house and asked him about Jackie.
Yeah.
And he said that he would have put a bullet in his head right there. And that, he had to live with that, oh, that guy killed more people, and he put that on himself.
Right. Yeah, the listeners should
Yeah.
know I've had a chance to talk to Jackie Cooper's son and daughter, and I hope to have them on a future episode, maybe this summer for Unfound, so we can continue to put all of these crimes of James Tolliver together. But I've had a chance to talk to him, and both of them told me about this story about their father, and once again, kind of the same, but also a little different because Jackie was still married, but she was a co-worker of James at a plant, whereas your mother seemingly had met James. He was using an alias, by the way, but met James at the social club thing. Okay.
And if you could pick the worst name for an alias, to call yourself Jim Joy when you are just distributing so much destruction,
Yeah.
it's just tough.
Yeah. I need to ask you, being that Florence was in the Modesto Parents Without Partners, as was your mother, is there any chance that actually
your mother and Florence knew each other. Did they know each other? Has that ever been proven, or what?
There's just, I don't have the information to see what the record memberships, if they overlapped or not. It's
Okay.
quite possibly that they attended functions, together. Everything was so hush hush that it could have happened, but he moved on fairly quick to his next victim after my mom. So, I think that they knew each other, but I don't know.
Okay. Okay. Ed, I know, do you have, I know that there's this group. Why don't you talk about, there's actually a group that is nothing but victims of James Tolliver on Facebook. Why don't you give the title of that group out? That's how, we've gotten to, we're introduced. Why don't you give the name out of that group right now, if you can?
Right. And so that's helped me know, that other people are suffering and going through it, and you don't feel like you're the only one. And it turns out there's, thousands and thousands of missing people. But the page on Facebook is Victims of James Tolliver. Mm-hmm. So it's Facebook Victims of James Tolliver.
Okay. Yeah, and of course, Jackie Cooper's children are in there. And if the listeners, and I haven't even brought up this, coincidentally, a guest who was on Unfound way back in 2017 actually is a relative of James Tolliver's wife who went missing. So she might be back on the program again, this summer to talk about that aspect of James's wife going missing. That's totally a coincidence. And I'll reveal who that guest is sometime in the future. But this group, Victims of James Tolliver, it is a group, family members who have been affected by his crimes in the 1970s up until 1980 are in there, and that's how I'm in there now too, of course, and I'm looking to speak to as many of those family members as I can, so we can build kind of a catalog of all these disappearances, and maybe I'll even speak to somebody in Florence Regina's family if I can track somebody down. I wouldn't mind doing that, even though we don't do actual murders on Unfound. But that, just try to cover this as comprehensively as we can. Ed, any final words before we complete this interview?
No, I mean, it's just brutal because you have to deal with, you meet other people with the name Tolliver, and then you have to keep yourself from wondering, what the connection is and like that. And then all the stories on the news, body found, more after this at 11, and you have to sit there. And then with all the shows, forensic science and things like that, you see the way people treat their parents, and it becomes tough to swallow. Right. But there was just a couple of things. Now that I've looked into it a little bit more, I just found out about his brother helping him drop the truck off, and it was 5 miles away from where I was working at the Kirkwood Ski Resort. So wow. I would have liked known a lot more from that man, why he did that, and if he'd ever helped him, before, stuff like that. So sorry.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I have looked into whether James Tolliver had any siblings. He did. Unfortunately, that brother that allegedly dropped that truck off there, unfortunately, he is deceased. However, there is a Jerry Tolliver who is still alive, and he's only 67. So I have some contact information for him. Maybe he might be able to give in some insight into his brother James, and maybe what the rest of their family knew about, James. I'm going to hope they didn't know he was killing any women, but maybe anything suspicious, anything awkward back at the time that they could remember. But at least one of his siblings is still alive, and he's only 67, so I would hope that he lives for some years. So that's something maybe that can continue to be worked on in 2022. It's at least, some leads that are still out there.
And the police told me, he was a huge gambler, but he had $28,000 in his bank account, and they just were amazed that somebody that gambled that much could have that money in the bank. And It turns out it's the exact same amount my mom gave him, or or what had taken out of the bank, or however how you want to say that.
Yeah. And I want to remind everybody, $28,000 in 1980. And considering inflation and everything, that might be 4 times as much. We could be talking $120,000 in today's money.
Yeah.
It's a huge amount of money.
My mom sold her house for $28,000, and now it's worth $513,000.
Oh,
so,
wow,
that's that. And the house that they sold for $64,000 in San Jose is worth over $1 million. So, like that. But I just have a few more things just to say.
Go ahead.
That I don't know, society or whatever it is, they don't really want to talk about missing people. And that it seems like you have to be a young white woman to get the attention that some of these cases deserve.
Yeah. There is that. That is true. That is not a perception. That is unfortunately reality. Of course, we don't hold to that Unfound. We talk to everybody. But that is something that exists. Of course, Gabby Petito, Sherry Papini, when she went missing, all of these women certainly do get a lot of national attention. You're right.
I mean, of course, Lacey Pearson from Modesto, it's just, you're thinking, wow, this guy used the same scenario as Jim Tolliver. He bought a boat, he went out in the marina and dumped the body, and that was it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we're trying to change that. All I can tell you, Ed, is we're trying to change the perception of disappearances. We're trying to do it one disappearance at a time.
It's been great lately. They have found a lot of people lately with technology and these divers checking in lakes, and it's just been amazing that they've made and with the DNA and all of that. So
yeah.
But I appreciate your time. I appreciate what you've done Unfounded, your books that you have out there. I'm going to definitely get a hold of that.
Thanks.
It's definitely been a rough week, but it's good.
Yeah, it's tough. I realize that it's tough to talk about it. 43 years since her disappearance, it's still as difficult as it was at the time. I get it, and I know it's not easy to talk about some of these things in the details, the technicalities, the very technical aspects of the way I ask questions. So I really do appreciate it.
And I had talked to Jackie's daughter. She was only 18 months old at the time, and I apologize for opening an old wound, but she reminded me that it's right there. It's always right just below the surface.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. Well, Ed, I appreciate you being on this episode of Unfound.
I appreciate it, Ed. 2 Eds are better than 1.
That's exactly right. You got that right, Ed. That is for sure. Thank you. And that was my May 30th, 2022 interview with Ed Watkins, son of Mary Watkins. I thank him for taking time out of his Memorial Day to join me and all of you on this episode. There's not a lot of mystery in Mary's disappearance. James Tolliver did it. We know why he did it. The struggle for me and all of you, besides the most important part of trying to find Mary, is understanding how something like this can happen. How can a mother who was close to her children, who had plenty of money, who had a great job, be convinced to drop everything, take out all of her cash from the bank, and run off with a practical stranger? Adding to the confusion is that she kept it all a secret. If Mary thought what she was doing was such a great idea, would she not have told people her plans? And if she thought it was a bad idea, why leave it all? Or maybe we need to look at it this way. Maybe Mary thought that her friends and family had gotten in the way of her own desires over the years, and that they would only do so once again if she told them her plans.
I suppose there's also the possibility that Mary went along with James Tolliver because he threatened her. If she didn't do as he said, he'd kill her children or something. I have my own ideas about all of this, but you know I don't like to lead you, the audience, in one direction or the other. You can come to your own conclusions. As far as disappearance classifications go, this is of the type of the art of luring, where a perpetrator convinces the victim to do something he or she would not normally do, with the promise of some kind of reward. Some of Unfound's disappearances in this category are Tyler North, Jeff Nichols, Stephanie Hartwell, and Barbara Frame. What makes Mary's unique within this type is what James used to lure her. It was the promise of love, security, friendship, and stability. This is certainly unique in the disappearances we've covered. But those maybe are the best lures of all, because they work with every human, whether the person is an addict or not, married or not, rich or not. We all have to be careful, even a cynic like myself. Don't fall for the con man or woman. I'll leave the theorizing up to you.
And that's the program. Right now, while you are in your podcast platform, Spotify, YouTube, iTunes, wherever, give Unfound a 5-star review, a thumbs up, whatever that platform allows. I thank you for listening. I'm Ed Densel, and you've just finished this episode of Unfound.